What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. How's the form? How is everybody getting on? So, it is the Dublin Senior Football Championship final this weekend between Ballyboden St Enda's and Kilmacud Crokes. A massive game in the Dublin Senior Football Championship, as it always is every year, really, when the Dublin Football Senior Final comes along, or even the Hurling Final as well. And it's huge because, look, Ballyboden St Enda's have been in phenomenal form this year, and we'll go through some of the statistics around Ballyboden in just a moment, but they have been in absolutely flying form this season, and it's going to be very fascinating to see if they can carry that form into playing what we've all perceived as possibly one of the great, club teams of all time when you look at some of the players that Kilmacud Crokes have. And obviously, having won the All-Ireland last year, they're also bidding to become the first Dublin team to win the Dublin Senior Football Championship 3 years on the spin since Nafina in 2001. So we'll be breaking that game down. We'll also be looking ahead to some other big games that are happening in club championships this weekend. You've got two semi-finals happening in Kerry. You've got county finals up and down the country. The Roscommon Senior Football Final is taking place. The Monaghan Final's on. The Wicklow Final. The Tipperary Final. The Sligo Final. I mean, there is county finals happening absolutely everywhere this weekend. County final bonanza. It's going to be a cracking weekend of football. Obviously, we'll be mainly focusing on the Dublin final because, that's where my eyes have been. That's where my attention has been throughout the club championship. It's probably why I haven't covered as much club championships this year, because I've just been so fixated on Dublin. And obviously, a lot of the time, it's hard to keep up with everything that happens around the country. I think that goes without saying. But we're here to obviously preview those games. We're here to break them down. Here to break down the Dublin final in detail. Let me know if you enjoy the content. Let me know if you want to see more club previews, matchday vlogs, watch-alongs, or anything of any nature, especially as we now progress into the real sort of nitty-gritty stage of the All-Ireland Senior Club Football Championship. So, yeah, look, let's get into it. Hit the like button. Just hit that like button. Do you know, it's easy. It's free content. Do you know what I mean? You cannot go wrong with that. So I suppose first thing is we'll just do maybe a little bit of housekeeping, or, I don't know, a bit of tidying up around the gaff, or whatever you really want to call it. I don't really know, because down GAA, they obviously released a statement on the whole scenario that happened last weekend, which, if you haven't heard, Kilmacud were taking on Burn in the Down Senior Football Championship final. I'll leave the statement on screen as well. I'm not going to read it out entirely, but you can have a read of it if you haven't seen it. Pause the video or something of that nature. But basically, the whole gist of it, the whole scenario was that, as I was saying, Kilmacud were playing Burn in the Down Senior Football Championship final. Paul Fallon was the man originally expected to be the man to ref the game in the middle of the pitch, and Kilmacud basically objected to it, and they said they did not want him to be the referee. And if you have a look at the statement down, very much early on said that, they rejected that appeal by Kilmacud, but then all of a sudden, it was out of their hands, and the referee, obviously Paul Fallon, stepped down, or all of a sudden wasn't going to be reffing the game. David Goff was drafted in. He then rejected it, and then eventually Martin Higgins reffed the game. You were starting to wonder, would this final even take place? So Down basically released a statement saying that, it was out of their hands in some ways, which is quite worrying. That, the fact that clubs are able to dictate who refs games and who doesn't ref games, and this whole scenario of, well, it was out of their hands, but how was it out of their hands? What happens? What happened that made Paul Fallon, it's still unclear. Did he step down? Or did Down decide, okay, you're not reffing the game? Or what happened? Did something go on behind the scenes? You just don't really know, and it's obviously hard to really speculate and know the sort of entire details. But it's a little bit, it's a little bit worrying in some ways that these kind of things can happen, up and down the, do these things happen in other counties? I don't know, but it's just worrying. And the fact that Kilmacud won the game as easily as they did, it just made Kilmacud look a little bit more silly, in my opinion. And again, as I said, obviously me and Seamus Brady were talking a bit about it on the review show last week. There was once a time where there was clubs in Italy in, professional football where, there was a whole scandal there in Italian football involving Juventus and other clubs where they were being more favourable towards certain clubs or towards certain referees for certain matches. And I just think it's dangerous. Don't get me wrong, every club, every county, when we see a referee, we're like, oh, we don't really want him in charge today. He doesn't tend to give us good decisions. But at the end of the day, that's just how it is. And a lot of these things balance themselves out later on in the season and everything else. So, yeah, I found this just a bit of a mess, a bit of a farce, to be honest with you. You know, I don't know how Down, managed to let this happen. I don't know how much power do Kilcoo have. People are speculating maybe because Conor Laverty is the Kilcoo or is the Down manager playing for Kilcoo that they didn't want to offend him. I just don't really know what the whole scenario is, but hopefully anyways we don't see this again. And obviously with Kilcoo playing in Ulster now, be interesting to see what the whole scenario is with referees there as well. But I just thought I'd react to that statement ever so slightly because it probably is worth mentioning in fairness. Alright, so let's move on to the Dublin Senior Football Championship final that's taking place this weekend, as we were saying. And what I'll do is I'll throw the most likely lineup from both sides. So we'll start with Ballyboden St Enda's. So you'll see it on screen right there. This is the starting 15 I think they will line out with. It was the starting 15 that played the last day, and it has been the starting 15 for the majority of the season. Alex Gavin, who played a wing-back. Simon Lambert might maybe come in there, but Michael Darren McCauley hasn't always been a regular starter, but I thought he was very impressive the last day as well. Looking at Kilmacud Crokes side then, I suppose the big question will be, will Craig Diaz return? He's obviously missed the last 2 matches through injury, so that's going to be the big question. Shane Walsh didn't start the last day, but you would expect, with it being a county final, that he most certainly comes in there, probably for Dara Dempsey, you would imagine, and the team will get shuffled around ever so slightly. And we'll throw in an image on screen right there as well, where you'll see both sides in the flesh in terms of matchups, in terms of who might pick up who. Obviously, this is not, a guarantee or whatever. This is what I think could possibly happen in terms of matchups. And obviously, if we're matching both teams up together, what way could it look? Hopefully, it's not too messy on the screen right there. But there we go. So, yeah, look, I suppose it's just going to be such an interesting final. Like, I suppose focusing in on Ballyboden St Enda's so far and looking at their journey to the final. So they beat Ballymun-Kickhams, Ballantyre St John's and Temple Ogue to top the group very convincingly. They then beat Castleknock and St Jude's to reach the final. And as I was saying, the most impressive thing about Ballyboden St Enda's this year, in my opinion, has been the way that they have just absolutely brushed everyone aside. To use a bit of a fighting analogy, Ballyboden St Enda's, it's almost like a fighter just storming the entire division, knocking everyone out left, right and centre. Their winning margins have been 5 points, 4 points, 13 points, 11 points, and then 13 points again in the semi-final. So, they've just been absolutely, phenomenal. Only once have Ballyboden St Enda's finished with less than an overall score of 20, and that was when they finished with 116 versus Ballymun-Kickhams. They've scored 9 goals and 91 points. It's absolutely insane. They're averaging about a goal and 18 points per game, which for a club team is phenomenal. When you factor in they're playing 60 minutes as well, it's just absolutely remarkable what Ballyboden St Enda's have done in Dublin so far this year. And I think in many ways it has gone under the radar, and not a lot of people have really been focusing on it or speaking about it in many ways, mainly because a lot of people just expect Kilmacud Crokes to eventually prevail and eventually pull through. But those who would have watched this channel and those who would have watched the video I done earlier in the year, or about a couple of months ago, or a month or two ago, where I predicted every club senior football championship, I predicted Ballyboden St Enda's to win this championship before a ball was kicked, and the main reason being is their quality from 1 to 15 is very, very good, and I think they match up brilliantly with Kilmacud Crokes. Don't get me wrong, I didn't expect them to be as good as what they've done. I haven't expected them to completely, blow away teams. Defensively, they've been absolutely solid as well. They've conceded on average about 9 to 10 points per game. Only conceded a couple of goals in there as well. And look, they do, although the last few years have been poor for Ballyboden, and we'll get onto that maybe in a brief moment. But maybe let's just look at their team again and look at some ways that I think that they can hurt Kilmacud Crokes. Midfield is key, and I think Ballyboden, for me, have controlled games brilliantly this year. They've blown away teams, and they've strolled to victories. But even at times when the going has got tough, Castleknock in the first half were creating goal chances in the quarterfinals, and were looking fairly dominant. But they were just able to get back on top, and Keane Darcy, Michael Darragh Macaulay around the middle have been outstanding. James Holland in at centre-back, I think, has been brilliant. Looking at the half-forward line, Warren Egan, I think, has really gone under the radar this year for Ballyboden as well. And of course, you can't look past the Basquel brothers, and in particular, Colin Basquel, who's carried, his brilliant form for playing from Dublin in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship, obviously winning that All-Ireland with Dublin. He's carried that form right into the club championship, and he hasn't missed a beat. And actually, as a matter of fact, he's looked even better at times this year. He's been outstanding. He's getting goals, points, setting up scores around him. He has been in flying form from a Ballyboden perspective. And, you're looking at that matchup, Dan O'Brien maybe to pick him up for Kilmacud Crokes. I think that could be a real fascinating matchup. Again, does Theo Clancy maybe go on him? Do they want to mix it up and go with Keane O'Connor or something like that? And it will depend on where Basquel is going to play as well. Does he play in the full forward line? Does he drift back into the half forward line? It is going to be interesting, no doubt. The worry for Ballyboden, and I was alluding to it a little bit earlier. The worry for Ballyboden will be in the fact that if you look back, since they won the county title in 2019, which is the last time they won it, you look back at 2020, 2021, 2022, and look at their defeats in senior championship, in knockout games, and you'll notice a common trend. Ballyboden have been absolutely hammered in the last 3 years in county finals, semi-finals, quarter-finals. Like, they have been, blown away, and, it strikes as just a mentality issue. Like, you can look at tactics and everything else and look at different issues or different things going on. But for me, I think the mentality of Ballyboden has been poor in the last couple of years in massive games when they've really needed to perform. And, we haven't really had an answer to that. That is the worry, because this year they've blown everyone away themselves. So, like, we've yet to see what happens when, like, Ballyboden receive a punch or, get turned over or, go 4 or 5 points down. We haven't had an answer to that yet. And that is the worrying point, is that we've seen Kilmacud Crokes' resilience, and we'll get onto them now in a couple of minutes. But we've seen their resilience. We've seen what they were able to do against Raheny, fighting back from the dead. Against Ballymun at times, it looked a little bit sketchy in that performance as well. But they found an answer. And we know Kilmacud Crokes have the resilience. They find a way when the going gets tough. They've done that for the last couple of years in Dublin, and obviously winning the All-Ireland last year. Do Ballyboden have that? That's something that we actually don't know. And, that's going to be the big sort of thing we're going to discover this weekend. So if we have a look at Kilmacud Crokes then in a bit more detail, they're bidding to become the first Dublin team, or the first club team in Dublin to win 3 senior football championships in a row since Na Fianna in 2001. Just looking at their route to the final, they beat Sylvesters, Castleknock and Skerries before wins versus Ballymun and Raheny set up their place in the final. It certainly hasn't been as comfortable for Kilmacud Crokes as opposed to Ballyboden. Obviously, we saw the penalty shootout that happened between Crokes and Raheny the last day, and Luke Ward obviously scoring that dramatic late goal right before the final whistle, literally the last kick of the ball to send it to extra time. Like, Raheny should have won that game. There's absolutely no doubt about it. They were the better team, dominated in midfield. Crokes, I thought, were sloppy. Their passing was poor. They managed to get Walsh in the game at times. Mannion was quiet at different moments. But I just thought the usual sort of control of Kilmacud Crokes, which is how I would describe them best, is that if Ballyboden St Enders are, storming through the division, knocking people out, well, what Kilmacud Crokes do is they just suffocate you. They keep the ball. They'll make life so difficult for you to get back in the game. And if you go 4 or 5 points down, Crokes will just will control the game. They'll pick off scores and they'll make life an absolute misery for you. I didn't see that against Raheny. There was so much sort of inexperience. They were lackluster. They were lazy, I felt at times. It just wasn't the sort of standard Kilmacud Crokes performance that you would have seen from the last couple of seasons. To be fair, like against Ballymun, I was impressed. They managed to come through that game. Ballymun, very good side, difficult team to beat at the majority of times. Through the group stages, they were a little bit vulnerable, but again, you have to factor in that Walsh and Mannion, fresh off a long county season and a long club season last year. So look, that would be the worry for Crokes, is that with a lot of these players, there's been a lot of mileage on the legs. You're seeing Craig Diaz picking up injuries. You're seeing different players coming in and out. Rory O'Carroll's had to come into midfield. There has been a bit of disruption at times with Kilmacud Crokes this year, and that maybe could be an issue going into this final. If we're looking at the danger men, look, I don't need to mention Paul Mannion and Shane Walsh because we know the talents that they have. If we're looking at who might pick them up, I mean, could Cathal Flaherty be the man to pick up Shane Walsh? Shane Clayton maybe go on Paul Mannion, or possibly even James Holland. So look, when you look at Ballyboden's defence, it screams of inexperience. There's no real sort of familiarity with any of those players in terms of playing the standard of players that Kilmacud Crokes have. But you have to hand it to Ballyboden defensively. They've been absolutely sound this year, conceding on average of 9 to 10 points per game. A couple of goals in there, but on average they've been superb. So we know obviously the dangers of Walsh and Mannion. Cian O'Connor obviously bursting up from wing back if he plays there. You're looking at Darren Mullen, Shane Cunningham, they have so many ways, and that's the thing with Crokes, is that they've so many ways of hurting you. Even if Mannion and Walsh aren't on it, you will have Darren Mullen who'll step up. You will have Shane Cunningham who'll come in. A Hugh Kenny as well. So they have so many different ways to hurt Ballyboden St Enda's. So ultimately then, in terms of our prediction, look, I backed Ballyboden St Enda's at the start of the season, and they've looked even better than what I've thought. They've absolutely steamrolled their way to the final. You would think with how good Ballyboden have looked, and with the fact that Kilmacud Crokes have looked quite vulnerable, that I would be more confident in that prediction. And look, I've no dog in this race. I'm a north side man in Dublin, so it won't. I won't really care if Ballyboden lose the game. I would like to see them do it because I made that prediction, and also because of the fact that I would like Ballyboden to stop Kilmacud Crokes and have a bit of a fresh team in the Dublin Championship. And I think for players like Pascal, Michael Darragh Macaulay, they more than deserve it. And I think they have been the best team in Dublin this year. But what would worry me is that Crokes have had their, they've had their scary game. They've had their scary moment. And we see this so many times with great club teams. Great club teams, they don't always just win every game by 10, 15 points or just cruise their way to county titles, cruise their way to All-Irelands. There's moments in there where they nearly get beat. You think of Corofin down the years. How many times did they nearly get beat in Galway, and then they find a way through, and then obviously go and win, an All-Ireland in their 3-in-a-row spell. You're looking at Crossmaglen Rangers, who for years in Armagh would often struggle, and then they'd kick on later in the year. Kilmacud as well would need penalty shootouts, extra time, all sorts, to come through a lot of games in Down as well. So, it's a little bit mental when you look at that. But Kilmacud Crokes, did they have their scary moment? They would have learned so much from that Raheny game. That Raheny game in many ways would have, although they won it nearly would have felt like a loss because of the fact that they were so close to being beaten, and they would have took so much from that game. Whereas Ballyboden, they'll do what they've already done, but we haven't really seen them in the flesh take a significant blow or take a significant test, and that would be a little bit of the concern in my opinion. I think the opening 10 to 15 minutes is crucial. I think Ballyboden need to start fast. If they don't come out flying, and if they don't come out fast, they'll lose this game. I've absolutely no doubt about it, because to go back to the fighting analogy, Kilmacud Crokes will just be trying to stay in the game and trying to win this via decision, if this was a boxing match, whereas Ballyboden will just come out and want to knock Kilmacud Crokes out straight away. They'll want to dish that early blow, get on top while they're hot, make the most of their confidence. It won't be easy though. There will be setbacks. Crokes will come into it and they'll make it tough. My head says Ballyboden, my heart says Ballyboden, my head says Crokes will win it. But I think with the fact that I've backed Ballyboden all the way, I don't think I'm going to change my opinion now. And I think Ballyboden's firepower should be too hot for Kilmacud Crokes to handle. I think Crokes have had vulnerabilities in there this year. Although I do think they will play well in this game, I'm going to go with Boden to nick it. And I'm going to say they do it after extra time as well. So there we go. That's my prediction. Ballyboden St Enda's to win the Dublin Senior Football Championship Final. Maybe another point to mention is actually Crokes' bench could really make an impact as well. We've seen that on so many occasions down the years. The likes of Shane Horan coming on or other players. So that's going to be an interesting one, make no question about it. But yeah, let me know your predictions, your thoughts, and let me know who do you predict to win the Dublin Senior Football Championship final this weekend. I'm not going to spend too much time really going through a lot of the other club championship games because my knowledge and detail mostly wouldn't be there, but we'll throw out a couple of predictions for the crack and obviously run through some different details, some interesting sort of stories that could potentially happen this weekend. So this is a post here on Twitter from ourgame.ie, just sort of looking at the different county finals this weekend. There are some semi-finals as well. Moycullen are taking on Mountbelly and Moylock and Galway. That could be an absolute cracker. And 2 Kerry semi-finals as well. But you'll see there the Sligo Senior Football Championship, Coolara Strandhill versus, I'm not going to pronounce that name. Deep sincere apologies. I don't want to butcher the name. My dyslexia sometimes catches up with me. I'll say that completely wrong. So you can see it on screen there. And to be fair, they've never won a county title before. So, obviously we don't know too much about them. Coolara Strandhill, they're bidding for their first county title since 2005. Obviously, you would have remembered Turles Strand were the dominant force in Sligo for so long. They were actually bidding to win 8 in a row this year before they got beat earlier in the championship. So, I'll go with Coolara Strandhill. For no particular reason, mainly just for the crack. In the Tipperary football final, you've got Clonmel versus JK Brackens. I wouldn't know a huge amount about JK Brackens, to be honest with you, but Clonmel, what I do know is that they have been the dominant force in Tipperary for the last 8-9 years, really. When you look at Mickey Quinlivan in there, Jack and Coleman Kennedy, they have a huge array of players, Clonmel. And you'll remember last year when they beat Nemo Rangers, I think everyone expected them then to go on and win Munster, and that wasn't the case. They were upset and beaten in the end. Was it by Newcastle West, I think, in the end? Look, I think Clonmel are looking good. And with the players that they have, they'll be massive favourites. And in Semple Stadium, a ground they know inside and out, I think they'll do it. In Wicklow, we've got Blessington versus Rathnew. Obviously, both of these two have tasted success in the last couple of years. Rathnew were the dominant force for a long time in Wicklow, and that sort of has faded away in the last couple of seasons. They'll be looking to get back on top. I tipped Blessington earlier in the year. I like a couple of players that they have, so I think I will stick with that prediction. But one thing we know is that Rathnew, when they get to this stage, when they get to finals, they're very, very dangerous, and especially in knockout games. And it could be interesting to see if they get through this. Could they cause a few more shocks in Leinster? But I'll go with Blessington. Monaghan, Inniskeen versus Scottstown. Interesting enough, Inniskeen haven't won the Monaghan title since 1948. So can they do it against Monaghan's top dogs in Scottstown? Obviously, Scottstown didn't win it last year. They got beat by Ballyboden. But Scottstown have phenomenal players from Rory Beggan, Conor McCarthy, Kieran and Darren Hughes. They have so much talent in there. And I've often been surprised Scottstown have never done better in Ulster, to be honest with you. But I'll go with them. I don't know a huge amount about Inniskeen. It could be a real fairy tale story, potentially brewing for them. But we'll go with Scottstown to win that. In Louth, Ardee St Mary's versus Nave Martin. Nave Martin obviously have the likes of Sam Mulroy in there. And they were bidding to win 3 in a row last year before missing out on the title. I'll go with them to win that championship. Back, Kildare, Selbridge versus Naas. We'll go with Naas. They have been the dominant force in Kildare for a couple of seasons now. The likes of Dara Kirwan, Paddy McDermott. And I think Naas will be, whoever comes through Dublin, Naas will be their biggest challenge in Leinster. Absolutely no question about that. Could Selbridge pull off a shock? We see these shocks every now and again, but I think Naas surely should be too strong there, you'd imagine. You look at some of Naas's wins in Kildare as well. They've kind of walked their way to that final in many ways. So, we'll go with Naas. In Donegal, you've got Goldobber versus Niamh Conall. Again, if I butcher any names, I apologise about that. But Niamh Conall have been, they've been the top team in the last couple of years. They know how to get through these games. It's not always pretty, and there is often a narrative that Donegal football is, not the most entertaining to watch. And I would probably expect this to be something similar. Niamh Conall to probably narrowly come through and win it. In Armagh, I'll go for Crossmaglen as well. For Armagh, I'll go for Aaron Gales. I think they've been knocking on the door. Although Derry Connolly have been the top force in Fermanagh for a couple of seasons, but I'll go with Aaron Gales. The Roscommon final will be really fascinating because Boyle haven't won that title since 1927, and with the likes of Enda Smith in there, could this finally be their moment against St. Bridget's? I think it will be. I think they'll do a St. Bridges, I know, are a massive club in Roscommon, super club in many ways, but I think Boyle will have enough. 2 Kerry semi-finals to look at. We've got East Kerry versus Rathmore, Mid Kerry versus Dingle. Look, you would look at this and think there should be 2 obvious winners to come through. East Kerry and Dingle should book themselves into the final. I mean, I don't really need to go into detail about East Kerry and the players that they have, and David Clifford, Paddy Clifford, Dara Moynihan. I mean, they have so much talent. It's, crazy. Interesting point about this one. Paul Murphy obviously was key to East Kerry last year in them obviously winning the Kerry County Championship. He'll actually be playing for Rathmore in this game, so he'll be playing against them, which is a little bit mental, isn't it? But there we go. But I'll go with East Kerry to win that. I think they will be too strong. Mid Kerry versus Dingle. I've been really impressed with Dingle this year. They've been the best team in Kerry by, a stretch, in my opinion. Paul Gainey, Dylan Gainey, the Calm Gainey. I mean, there's more Gaineys in Dingle than there is Kardashians at this stage, but Dingle have been outstanding, and I fully expect them to carry that on. Mid Kerry have been a tricky team for teams to beat in the last couple of seasons, but Dingle will be too strong, and they'll win that. And in terms of Mount Ballymoylock versus Moycullen in Galway, we'll go with Moycullen. I think they will be too strong, and they'll beat Mount Ballymoylock for 2 seasons on the spin. So there we go. Let me know your predictions, your thoughts. Obviously, mainly looking at the Dublin final, but I thought I'd just give a shout out to some of the other club games that are happening this weekend as well. And let me know some of your predictions for this weekend's club matches. We'll be bringing back match reactions this weekend as well for some various different matches. So yeah, look, I'm looking forward to it. Should be some cracking games. The Dublin final, I'm going to be there in Parnell Park. Looking forward to it. As I said, I would like to see Ballyboden get over the line. I don't have a dog in the fight, but I would like to see Ballyboden do it, just because Crokes have a super team, and it'd be nice to see Ballyboden humble them a little bit, is what I would say. But yeah, like one thing I would say, if Crokes beat Ballyboden, they win the All-Ireland. That's it. It's done, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens. Leave a like, subscribe. See you all later.